Welcome back to Decoding Wisdom. Let's begin with a question today. If you nudged one habit by just 1% today, would you even feel it? A lot of us will just shrug because a single percentage point feels microscopic. But fold that sliver of improvement into every single tomorrow, and that maths will actually start to get very cheeky. Think about this. 1.01 to the power of 365 is roughly 37. Okay? And compare that to 0.99 to the power of 365, about 300ths. That's only 0.03. So it's the same 12 months, wildly different universes. And that exponential destiny is what Sir Dave Brailsford, who was the cycling coach for Team GB, has termed the aggregation of marginal gains. And long before the phrase became a LinkedIn meme, British cycling was just a punchline of Olympic jokes. They had no results, no medals, a history of just chain breaks on race day. That's it. That's all they were. And then when Brailsford entered in 2003 with this zero talk of moonshot ideas, he started developing these micro improvements, very small. He first ordered antibacterial hand washing lessons to cut illness days. Riders had to haul their own pillows to hotels for deeper sleep. And the mechanic's truck was painted white so that any speck of dust stood out against the bike frames. Small, tiny details. And 5 years later, in 2008, Beijing, Team GB hoovered up gold. And 4 years later, at London 2012, they dominated. And that very year, Bradley Wiggins actually won the Tour de France as well. Tiny hinges, giant doors. Now, all these huge achievements on a bike are fun. But why should you or me or the average commuter Joe care about this? Because Joe's life is being written right now, line by line, by the tiniest author, where he leans on 1%. So, let's split his morning, Joe's morning, in two different timelines. Timeline A, Joe wakes up, slams snooze twice. His thumb flicks Instagram. He grabs a sticky donut on the way out, scrolls emails while even crossing the street. And in the evenings when he gets back, he drifts into this mindset of just one more Netflix episode. And the day just dissolves. Now compare that to this. Timeline B. Joe puts his phone across the room. When the alarm goes off, he stands up to silence the alarm, pours his overnight oats, has it for breakfast, scribbles a 3-line priority list on the train ride to work, swaps 10 late night minutes of scrolling for a stretch and an audiobook. It's the identical guy, same guy, identical 24 hours, but timeline B has smuggled in 4 or 5 micro edge upgrades. And if you give these two Joes 6 months, one will feel sturdier, lighter, less frantic, and the other is just wondering where the time's gone. And this isn't new. This concept of aggregation of marginal gains. The Japanese call this Kaizen. Many of you have heard this as well, which means continuous improvement. And James Clear packages it as atomic habits. Investors reverently speak of it as compound interest. Strength trainers or gym trainers call it progressive overload. So it's different jerseys, but the same underlying physics. Something small, applied relentlessly, becomes something seismic. So why does the brain like these increments? Well, a recent review by Sports Medicine notes that tiny achievable goals spark repeatable dopamine hits. And that very chemical reaction confirmation loop tells your nervous system, great mate, let's do that again. It's effortful behaviors sliding into autopilot so that the 1% costs less willpower each round. That's it. And the contrast is that with the New Year's resolution moonshot, sheer ambition, zero infrastructure, that collapses by February, mate. Simple as that. Now, there are disclaimers here. Marginal gains are worthless if your fundamentals are trash. A cyclist can index his gears to perfection, for example. But if he's eating ice cream for breakfast, the chain lube's not going to save him, is it? And likewise, some problems need a moonshot. Quitting a toxic job, perhaps, leaving a stale relationship, pivoting a failing company. You might have to. Marginal gains refine. They don't replace the big rocks. And here's a personal confession. I once tried optimizing my podcast editing workflow so much, color coding, folders, mapping hotkeys, testing plugins, that I spent more hours tinkering than actually recording conversations or solo episodes. Perfectionism masquerading as productivity. That's what was happening. And one of Brailsford's former writers actually called this marginal gains gone mad. Point taken, I guess. Where you're actually chasing perfection without actually doing the job. But if you apply it sanely, the effect is borderline magic. Think about this. Your own 1% that, is stacked the highest. Silicone earplugs and an eye mask when you go to sleep. That's it. That's the 1%. A deeper sleep added a hard to quantify edge to every waking domain. Sharper interviews, steadier mood, cleaner lifts in the gym, pillows in hotel rooms, dust on bike paths, earplugs, eye masks at night. Same principle. So here's where I land with this. You don't need a corporate budget or an Olympic velodrome. You need 2 questions. 1. Where am I leaking micro performance every single day? 2. What is the easiest 1% plug I can install right now? Notice, I'm not handing out a homework to you guys. No challenges. All I'm asking is that next time you catch yourself reaching for autopilot, whether that's that email refresh, on your snack cupboard, Netflix autoplay, pause. Pause long enough to see if there's a 1% nudge available. Because 1 nudge becomes 10, 10 becomes systemic, and systemic quietly rewrites the trajectory of a life, which is your life. And Dave Brailsford's cyclists didn't win on a single Wednesday afternoon, but on thousands of unnoticed Wednesdays where towel hygiene improved by 1%. Right? And that same arithmetic is humming under your job, your bank account, your marriage, your squat form even, everywhere. So great lives aren't built in radical leaps. They're built in the boring, invisible 1% nobody claps for until everyone starts clapping once they notice. Again, it's tiny hinges, giant doors. Where you choose to place that hinge today decides how wide your life might swing tomorrow. With that, thanks for listening to another episode of Decoding Wisdom. I'll catch you next week.